Welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. Our service today is called Be Like JB, Finding Our Prophetic Voices in the Commons. Good morning. Oh, you can do better. Good morning. All right, have some life. I am the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Intriligator. My pronouns are she and hers. I am pleased that you could be with us in worship this morning. We are a church of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands, and all who share our values are welcome to join with us. In case you haven't noticed, it's peak fall right now in New England. It's gorgeous outside, so if you need a reminder, put something in your calendar and get outside this week and soak it in. Don't miss this time. We have just a couple of announcements this morning before we get started with worship proper. First, if you have been thinking about creating a new social justice ministry team, the time is now. We're having an information meeting on Tuesday night at 7, or you can see Garen if you have any questions. Garen, how about a wave so everyone knows who you are? Great. Our second announcement is that on Wednesday, our new adult education program is starting. It is a conversation about spirituality and death and dying, led by the Reverend J. Libby, and it will be 7:30 in the parlor, and no need to sign up, just show up. Next Saturday night is our Halloween party for all ages. It will be fun. And next Sunday morning, we're going to try an experiment. With our Next Steps program, we're going to experiment with moving away from our multi-gen worship, the way we've done it before, in favor of finding a way to be more family-centered and more interactive. So we will start here, we'll have a song and a story, and then we will break up and go gather around tables in Parish Hall and down in the supper room to share our reflections about the story and interact and have a meal. I'm calling it Brunch Church. So bring a friend, it should be fun next Sunday. Now, we have one last word about our church auction.
Hello, I am Principal McGee. Oh, no, wait, I'm Wendy Mastronardi. However, I got to play Principal McGee at our last year's church auction when our theme was high school homecoming. What will our theme be this year? We don't know, because we do not have a chair for the church auction. We have a wonderful support team, but no chair. So please speak to me, Wendy or Principal, after the service, if you would like to be the one to make the church auction happen, which supports the important work of this church.
Thank you, Wendy. Now on to today's worship. First, I have to give thanks to the people who helped us this morning. We have our usher, Martha, our greeter, Wendy, and our coffee hosts, Michael and Nancy. Thank you all. Without you, it wouldn't happen. As many of you know, probably all, our theme this month for worship, RE, and our covenant groups is heritage. And this month so far, we've looked at how our land was taken from indigenous people. And then we looked at how some of our UU ancestors worked in the abolitionist movement and some didn't. And we've even spent a whole worship service thinking about the spiritual and religious roots of repair and reparations. And today, all three of those themes will come together in our worship service, thanks to our very special guests. So let me now introduce them. First, we have the Reverend John Gibbons. John retired recently, maybe 2 years ago, from our UU church in Bedford, where he'd been the minister for 30 years. And John will lead our story time this morning. Currently, John is affiliated with Arlington Street Church, where he holds the title of Community Minister for Good Trouble. And it's in that capacity that he has worked for a few years now with our preacher this morning, the Reverend Dr. Kevin Peterson. Kevin is a public theologian and the founder of the New Democracy Coalition, which works to promote justice and civic literacy in Boston. For 5 years now, Kevin has led the drive to educate people about Peter Faneuil and to start a citywide conversation about renaming Faneuil Hall as a first step into our larger discussion about reparations in the city of Boston. So welcome, John. Welcome, Kevin. And I also want to welcome all the guests that we have with us today. This weekend, we are also hosting a very special all-weekend-long Jubilee 3 anti-racism training. And so we have some of the people here in the room with us, and some are joining us on Zoom. Welcome to all our guests. Now, let's do our weekly welcome where we say hello to one another and say hello to our guests. Wave to the people on Zoom who are up here on the screen. Hello, Zoom people. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you all for being with us for worship this morning. Now, we begin. I call us to worship this morning with these words from the great 20th century writer, James Baldwin. He writes, "History, as nearly no one seems to know, is not merely something to be read. And it does not refer merely or even principally to the past. On the contrary, the great force of history comes from the fact that we carry it within us. We are unconsciously controlled by it in many ways. And history is literally present in all that we do. It could scarcely be otherwise, since it is to history that we owe our frames of reference, our identities, and our aspirations." The words of James Baldwin. Now we light the living symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. I call forward John Raymond, who is our treasurer and a member of our board, to light the chalice and lead us in our covenant words.
Please rise. I invite you to rise and rejoin me in the words of the covenant, which you can see on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
If you would remain standing and join in our opening hymn, which is number 123 in the gray hymnal. The words will appear on the screen, so you don't have to dig out the hymnals. It's Spirit of Life. Thank you. You may be seated.
Good morning.
Woo!
Mission accomplished. This is more like a word cloud and not exactly a story, but that's the way it goes. My name is John Eric Gibbons, and my pronouns are he, him, his. Gibbons was my German-Irish father's name. My mother's maiden name was Johnson, hence I am John. And her family, once upon a time, was Norwegian, so I have the Scandinavian middle name Eric. In elementary school, when I was first learning to write, I filled a few notebooks practicing to write my name. Have you practiced to write your own name sometimes? Yes, yes, many of you have. I wanted my name to look good on paper. I was proud of my name. It was my name. I was a little embarrassed, however, when I discovered that the name Gibbons, when spelled backwards, is S-N-O-B-B-I-G, snob big. But then when I was in high school, I was in the debate club, and in competitive debates, each team would write their names on a blackboard at the beginning, and I would write J. Eric Gibbons. I thought that that would intimidate my opponents, J. Eric Gibbons. I think I was a bit of a snob. Please raise your hand if you have a name. Oh, I think it's pretty much everybody, yes. Now, raise your hand if you have ever changed your name, your given name or your surname, your family name, either through marriage or just because you wanted a different name because you didn't like your given name or you like something else better or because your name just didn't fit you anymore. How many of you have changed your name at some point? Oh, maybe more than half of you have done that, at least. Now, raise your hand if you or someone in your family or someone you know have changed their name because of a gender transition. Some hands there? Quite a few hands there. Okay. Here are 5 quick stories. My wife and I have a son, Eric Benjamin Baldoff, his mother's name, Gibbons. Eric has gone through a period of Indian meditation, and sometimes he calls himself Akash, A-K-A-S-H, which means sky in Sanskrit. And sometimes now he also calls himself Benji, and Eric too, whatever. As circumstances require, people change names. There is a UU minister, our colleague in Malden, the next town over, whose name was Otto O'Connor. Otto is a trans man, and he's married to a woman named Amy Concannon, and for a variety of reasons, he's recently taken her surname, and he is now Otto Concannon. Okay. I had a parishioner whose name at birth was Ratcliffe Mildrum. He didn't like the Ratcliffe part, rat, and he became Riff. I loved Riff. I had another friend when I was a teenager whose nickname was Rat, and he loved being called Rat. One more person I know is a minister named Gail. Her legal first name was Rachel, but then she learned that her father, who was not an especially nice guy, named her after one of his old girlfriends, not her mother. That left a bad taste in her mouth, and she now wants to be known as Gail, not as Rachel. And finally, I knew a parishioner named Elsie. Elsie is an okay name, but she didn't really like it. You know, there was a dairy company, Borden, that used to have an advertising mascot named Elsie the cow. And maybe this Elsie didn't quite appreciate that connection. And so many years ago in Bedford, there was a big party, and in the course of things, Elsie took a ride on the back of a friend's motorcycle, and by the time she and Paul roared back to the party, she had changed her name to Sabrina. Post-motorcycle ride, Ellie became Sabrina, just like magic. And there are famous people. Cassius Clay became Muhammad Ali. Karen Elaine Johnson became Whoopi Goldberg. She said, if you get a little gassy, yes, I said gassy, you've got to let it go. So people used to say to me, "You're like a whoopee cushion." Goldberg was her mother's maiden name. David Henry Thoreau, he became Henry David Thoreau. He thought about becoming Whoopi Thoreau. No, I just made that up. Names matter, especially in a multi-ethnic, multi-gendered world. We hear all sorts of names from many different cultures. Don't shorten or simplify those names. If somebody has a name that seems like it's hard to pronounce, well, learn to pronounce it. Figure out their pronouns. Learn where they come from. A lot of African names come from the day of the week when someone was born. Kofi, for example, means Friday. Kwame means Saturday. There are many traditions for name giving. Often I officiated at naming services, sometimes called baptisms or dedications, but always I said, "We rejoice that you are you. We welcome you in love." Self-help guru Dale Carnegie, who, by the way, changed the spelling of his last name from that which he had at birth, he once said that if you want to leave a positive impression on someone, to make them feel noticed, important, and valued, say their name. Say their name. Names make things real. Names identify us. Names tell us who we are. Names carry deep personal, cultural, familial, and historical connections. They also give us a sense of who we are, the communities to which we belong, and our place in the world. Names convey and create meaning. They reveal something about who we are, where we come from, where we're headed, what's important to us, what we value. You will hear more about all of this from Kevin, and this may require a lot of unpacking when it comes to Faneuil Hall. That hall was named after the enslaver and slave trader Peter Faneuil, and we don't want to erase his name. Rather, we want his name to be known, because, come on, most people haven't a clue about who he was, how to spell or even pronounce that name. Just the other day, I met somebody who was convinced that Faneuil should be pronounced in the French way, Fanouille. Really? We want to make all of that history to be known, but also to make known as much as possible about those thousands or millions of enslaved Africans whose names were erased by slavery. Their names matter every bit as much as do our own. You know the old saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me." Friends, that is not true. Names can hurt. Names can be embarrassing, shaming, rude, offensive, and hurtful. Maybe that's happened to some of you sometimes. I'm sorry. Names can also heal. They can represent what we love and cherish about ourselves, our history, our hopes for the future. Names matter. Names of people, names of buildings, every name. They can shackle us to the past, or they can free us to imagine a new and better tomorrow. Names lead us into deeper conversations. Let's talk about our names. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, John, and thank you for your good listening. Anyone who'd like to join the religious education classes may do so now. Every week in the center of our worship service, we take time to ground ourselves. We set aside time for quiet and meditation. So I invite you into that time this morning. Feel your body in your seat. Relax your body. Feel your feet on the floor. Breathe deeply in and out. We will enter our meditation time this morning via our centering song, which we choose every month to go with our theme. After the centering song, we will share 2 minutes of quiet. Then we will speak to one another of our joys and sorrows, and I will lead us in a prayer. Our centering song for this month on Heritage is "We Are Not Our Own," verses 1 and 2. It's 317 in the gray hymnal. Lyrics will appear on the screen. Join in as you like. Remain seated and let the song guide you into our time of quiet. It is our tradition here every Sunday to share with one another our joys and sorrows, the personal milestones of our lives. This sharing helps us to better companion one another on the journey of life and knits us into an ever stronger community. I invite anyone who has a sorrow to share to please come forward. Speak at the microphone so everyone can hear you and see you. People in our Zoom room are invited to type a sorrow into the chat box and I will read them aloud.
Good morning. I'm Janice Bissix. I'm lighting a candle today for my dear friend Gail Carey, who lost her mother this week. And I was also reminded this morning that 1 year ago, Dawn and I got a text that our daughter had had an emergency C-section, and that we didn't hear anything for hours, and our grandson was sent to Children's and spent a week there. Anyway, it was a stressful time, but Elliot is now a very healthy and very happy 1-year-old.
I have a candle of concern for my friend and fellow MUUC church member, Beth Cockerham. On Friday, she had surgery for a broken clavicle that she broke while she was swimming in the Pacific Ocean, and a wave knocked her over. But she's recovering now.
That's Beth Cockrum. Thank you. Thank you, Martha. There are no sorrows in our Zoom room. So I'll ask you, Martha, to please light one of our candles here as a symbol of our care, love, and concern for all those people who have sorrows in their minds and hearts this morning. Let's remember to hold in our thoughts today the people of Israel and the people of Palestine. Thanks, Martha. Now I invite anyone who has joy to share to please come forward, speak at the microphone. People on Zoom are invited to type a joy into the chat box.
Good morning. I'm Allison Chase, she, her. I'm from First Parish in Groton, and I just have a joy to thank you for hosting the Jubilee here. This community's been very welcoming, and we very much appreciate it. And I also want to thank Donna Nowak, who I hope is on Zoom or here, who is leading the charge for the 8th principle in our church. And so I'm very grateful for her. Thank you.
This is a candle of appreciation and joy to our, the coordinator of our anti-racism team, which is no longer active at this point, and that is Josh Shortledge, who almost single-handedly initiated the launching of our Jubilee 3 weekend, which is an anti-racism 21-hour weekend. Now, he did do it in partnership with the UU ministry and some other organizers who played a major role, probably especially the Fallen Church, to my understanding at least. We have, I think, 25 UU churches participating in person and online this weekend, and it's very powerful. So I also wanted to just, a little side note, my birth certificate says my name is Susan Hathaway Aarons. My parents lived in West Hartford at the time. My parents' only explanation for changing it to Elizabeth was there were too many Susans in our neighborhood in West Hartford, Connecticut, where I lived at that time. So that's one of my name change stories.
Hi, I'm Dan Franklin, and this is a candle of joy in celebration of the multi-generational a cappella concert that I participated in last night. It was a wonderful experience, and I learned that we have an incredible Melrose High School Honors a cappella choir. They sounded truly wonderful.
I'm Chuck Foley. I just want to share a nice little coincidence. Yesterday I was having a conversation with some folks, and New Mexico came up. And I went to say, oh, gee, you know, this member of this musical community that I'm in moved to New Mexico a few years ago, and I couldn't remember her name. And I'm like, she traveled in her own little camper, and she played the auto harp, and she's an ordained minister. And someone that was sitting next to me said, you know, it's okay. You're not losing it. You know, your brain just rearranges stuff for how much they need to be in the forefront. So later, last evening, and I was determined not to try to go scouring and find her name, right? I needed to pull it out. Facebook, there she is. My friend Margaret, was her birthday yesterday.
Hi, my name is Sachi, and I'm a member of the First Parish Church in Watertown. And it's been a joy to be here all weekend for the Jubilee Anti-Racism Workshop. So thank you.
Thank you. And I have two concerns, joys actually, from our Zoom room. The first is from Deb Olander, who is a participant in the Jubilee 3. She says, gratitude to Melrose UU for hosting, and to our facilitators, Paula, Latricia, and Leon. And also from Adrienne Wood, she asked for continued prayers for strength and positive energy. I can't seem to catch a break and am now quarantined with a bad virus. Thank you to everyone for all your support. That's from Adrienne Wood. So, if you would please, Martha, light the other candle to symbolize our gratitude for all the many blessings and joys in our lives. And late breaking from Laura Pattinson, and glad that Paula is on Zoom for the service today. Yes, our leader in Jubilee 3, Paula Cole-Jones, is with us today. We're grateful to her. Please, if you would, join me in the spirit of prayer. O God of many names, Spirit of life, mystery of creation, power of love that moves through us. Be with us here and now. Let us feel your presence. Great Spirit, hear us, hear our sorrows today. Hear our pain, hear all the things and the struggles we are holding. Be with us. Hear also our joys. Receive our gratitude for our many blessings. And God of many names, please help us open our ears today. Help us to hear the still small voice within of our own conscience. And help us to hear also all the many other voices around us, especially the voices of those who are different from us, different in age or gender, sexuality or class or life experience. Help us to open ourselves to the truth. Help us to live in truth. Help us, O God, every day. Give us the chance, once again this day, to do better, to know better, to love better. Amen.
Now is the time for our offertory. Our church is a self-supporting organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Folks on Zoom can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. For the month of October, at the request of our recently rebooted fellowship committee, this church will be giving half our collection plate to a social enterprise called More Than Words, with an online store for books and gifts and 2 brick-and-mortar locations. More Than Words provides support and paying jobs to Boston area young people who have been involved in the court and foster systems. This morning we welcome Alistair MUUC to sing our anthem.
This is a new song. Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, so few can name her. Her name isn't famous in our history. Mississippi flame leader, voting rights claimer. What she gave to this country is plain as can be. Claudette Colvin's bus story stolen. Precursor, worthless, she's pregnant and poor. Teenager, single, an unwanted symbol. Sat in that same seat 9 months before. History faded, boiled and brewed, reduced to the few, while the others we lose. It's women, of course, who mostly get lost. They never got asked at the time what they thought. Rosa gets mentioned, but where's the attention to her love for Malcolm, her fist in the air, the radical rebel at Highlander Folk School is lost to the seamstress with the part in her hair. History narrowed to simplified truths, hemmed in and hued. It's the sharpness we lose. Revolution, of course, is mostly what's lost. The brighter colors fade in the wash. Ella Baker, miracle maker. Stokely, Baird, Moses and Braun, Chisholm, Jordan, Boynton, Bond, and on and on and on and on. The links in the chain get lost in the mist. The facts and the names lose out to the myths as the cynics rip meaning apart at the seams and leave us with nothing. But I have a dream. History sanitized, sterilized, trimmed. You're nowhere if you don't know where you've been. This country is twisted, stuck at the cross. And it's us, of course, who mostly get lost.
Two scriptures into your hearing. The book of Isaiah, the 40th chapter, the 3rd verse through the 5th verse reads, "The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill brought low. The crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. And in the book of Matthew, the 11th chapter, the 7th through the 10th verse, as John's disciples were leaving, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out into the wilderness to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear fine clothes are in the king's palaces. Then what did you go out into the wilderness to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written. Brother Alistair, what a wonderful musical rendition. The music indeed takes us back to days gone by of the civil rights movement, of gains of goodness and justice, of power and protest, of faith in the future of democracy, of hope in a heritage of freedom, conferred not by man, but by the Almighty who loves us all. For love is the question and love is the answer. It is in the context of love that we find an abundant and abounding life. This is the love of Eros, this is the love of Philia, this is the love of agape. An abounding and abundant love that fosters and foments human flourishing. And beloved, we can recall what Shakespeare said about love. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds or bends with the remover to remove. It is an ever-fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is a star to every wandering bark. Find the Apostle Paul in the Bible this morning and hear what he has to say about the efficacy and the power and the potential of love. Paul says, you may be gifted with the tongues of men and angels and possess the power of articulate speech, but if you don't have love, you have absolutely nothing. Paul says you may be gifted with the gift of prophecy and enabled with the capacity at extraordinary mathematical and scientific predictions, but if you don't have love, you have absolutely nothing. And you may somehow retain the abilities and have the overabundance of facts and knowledge and wisdom so that the intelligence stored up in the great libraries of Timbuktu or Oxford or the University of Chicago, all those things may be in your mental possession, but if you don't have love, you have absolutely nothing. Beloved, love is the question and love is the answer. And as Stevie Wonder would say, that musical master of Motown, as he would say, in one of the songs in the album, in the songs in the Key of Life, love is in need of love today. Don't delay, send yours in right away. Hate going around making many fall. Stop it, please, before it's gone too far. Love is the question and love is the answer. Thank you, Reverend Dr. and Trilogator, for the invitation to engage this congregation this morning. You're so kind, and I commend you and the leadership of this church. May you continue to do good works, and may God continue to bless you. My dear friend, Reverend John Gibbons, is here. You heard him teaching this morning about naming and renaming. Reverend Gibbons has quickly become an associate with me and others in the social justice fight against racism. Reverend Gibbons is a man of high intelligence and wit and courage. Brother John, the world is made better every day by and through your good works. May God continue to bless you. I love you as a friend and a brother. And my good friend Linda Thompson is here, who also engages with us in the work of social justice around race. She's been a warrior in the freedom struggle for a long time. I'm glad to see you this morning. I didn't know you were coming. I'm glad to see you. Congregation, you've already heard the sacred words of the Lord read this morning from the book of Isaiah and the Gospel of Matthew. They are words that speak of a man on a mission, a man of calling, a man compelled through sacred encouragement to convey the good news, a man who was a herald. He was a prognosticator. He was a prophet. Indeed, John the Baptist was a forecaster, a foreteller, a predictor of the Lord's coming. His job was to speak to the coming of Jesus into the world. Jesus, the Lord of love and salvation, was to come into our common spaces. And we, preachers and readers of the Bible, can hardly think about John the Baptist, JB, if you will, without thinking about his mission. His mission was to prepare the world for the coming of the Savior Jesus. JB's mission was to speak to a society and a culture of better days ahead. His mission was to inaugurate new ways of thinking and acting in the wake of the coming of Jesus Christ. JB was a prophet par excellence. He was a forerunner charged with paving a way towards redemption through good works. JB was in opposition to the empire of the great and powerful Roman Greco world of his day. JB was about counterculture. He was in the world, but not of the world. JB was an iconoclast bearing the message that the soon coming King of Peace was about to arrive in our midst. The Lord of love would arrive and the world would never be again the same. JB in the end would have his head cut off by those reigning in the earthly hegemonic powers of empire, the powers and principalities of the material realm, but JB was resolute in his mission of acting in the interest of a new Jerusalem where there would one day be peace. That day when the children of darkness would be scattered into the nether worlds of obsolescence, and the children of light would dance in the ethereal glow of glory everlasting. Now, I'm clear about this one thing this morning, that JB is someone we can model ourselves after. JB is a character we can replicate as individuals and as a way of living in concert and in community in the commons. And I'm convinced there are attributes of JB that resonate as being those that would enhance our lives and the lives of our neighbors. And what was so powerful about JB that we would emulate him? Well, JB was a prophet of words and good works in the commons, meaning that he spoke and he acted in the interest of goodness in the future. He preached in the wilderness of all us one day arriving at a better place. Yes, beloved, JB spoke on the cragged mountains of human persistence, about how those mountains, the mountains of fear in our lives, the mountains of disappointment in our lives, the mountains of hate and animus in our lives, those mountains would one day be made low. And JB talked about how the crooked places in our existence, our mourning over the death of a loved one, our addictions and bad habits that sap our spirit, our disdain for our brothers and sisters because they may have wronged us somehow. JB talked about how those crooked places will be made straight. JB talked about the rough places that we encounter and navigate over the course of our life. The rough places of alienation from our children, the rough places of separation from our loved ones, the rough places of political or ethnic oppression. These rough places will be made smooth. Well, I'm here at the Melrose Unitarian Universalist congregation this morning with words of exhortation and encouragement. We can all be like JB. As much as JB displayed his care and concern for those suffering in the wilderness of the world, the wilderness of life, we too can summon our capacities for a deeper affection for each other. As much as JB became a herald about being a better community and a better world, we too can call upon our competencies at helping one another in difficult times and making life worth living across our common humanity. As much as JB spoke and acted in the spirit of hope and possibility that a new day, a new dispensation was coming, we too can aspire towards addressing the wrongdoings that plague the private and social spaces of our realities, those ugly realities of sexual chauvinism, those ugly realities of war in the Middle East this morning, those ugly realities of environmental degradation that is causing global warming, those ugly realities of white supremacy. What did you come into the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No, those who wear fine clothes are in kings' palaces. Then what did you go into the wilderness to see? A prophet, yes, I tell you. And more than a prophet, oh, beloved. We can be like JB in the world during these times by prophesying and speaking about bad cops who maim and murder blacks on the nation's streets and highways, by prophesying and speaking out against income equality, by prophesying and speaking out against taxation policies that make the rich richer and the poor poorer, by prophesying and speaking out against all forms of xenophobia, by prophesying and speaking about despicable symbols in our society that seek to demean and desecrate and demote and debase others. As John has mentioned this morning, there is a building in Boston named Faneuil Hall. The building was constructed before our nation became a nation. It's iconic. It has a rich and storied history where battles over our democracy were fought in the name of justice. Yet Faneuil Hall is named after Peter Faneuil, who was a slave trader and a slaver. For rum and sugar, Peter Faneuil sold other human beings into a bitter bondage to be broken. In the name of mercantilism and financial gain, Peter Faneuil consigned African people to a social death designed to dispirit them. In his rapacious and acquisitive pursuit of wealth, Peter Faneuil waged contest and combat and conflict with a race of people in a global transatlantic slave trade that would last for more than 3 centuries. Peter Faneuil was a mogul with no morals. He was an unrepentant and unpleasant hustler, possessive of a hooligan mentality. He was a money-grabbing gangster full of greed and mammonism. Peter Faneuil was an existential ethical miscreant of deeply dubious character. Everything about Peter Faneuil was disgraceful, and his name should not adorn a public building in Boston or anywhere. Well, beloved, some of us in Boston are seeking to change the name of Faneuil Hall. We want to change it because it's a public building whose name does not reflect those good things that otherwise have been achieved at that place. We want to change the name because Peter Faneuil's name and persona mocks the very idea of democracy. His name sullies the concept of freedom. His name is blasphemous against the notion of liberty. We want to change the name in the interest of letting generations of future Bostonians know that people in this city decided one day to stand up for the integrity of black people, that a group of Bostonians determined to tell the complete story of racial terrorism in Boston in the interest of reparations and reconciliation. And all of this standing up against racism in Boston is like being like JB, speaking to a new place where truth and justice will be realized as part of our common life, where hope is prioritized and where peace is ever present and human flourishing reigns at last for all. You know, I go back to work in Boston tomorrow. And I love Boston. It is in some ways a beautiful city. And often my work takes me to City Hall and the State House and Government Center downtown. And I can remember not long ago making my way to the State House early one morning and climbing the stairs of Park Street Station onto the Boston Commons. Some of you are familiar with that site. And upon exiting the Park Street Station that early morning hour, I happened to look up, and there above the golden plated dome of the State House are the sun and the moon raised in twin symbiosis against the powder blue heavens. Boston, beloved, can be said to be a beautiful city. And I turned to my left and witnessed the mighty oaks standing in resplendent postures of permanence across the Boston Common, their presence marking a stately magnificence and charm, and the leaves on those trees looked like they were good for the healing of the nations. And I looked to my right, and there is the newly constructed Millennium Tower, its frame erected to scrape the sky. It's a structure wrapped in gleaming and diaphanous blue glass. Boston, beloved, is said to be a beautiful city. And this made me think of the Seaport District just blocks away, where in a matter of decades, we built a city within a city. And those buildings in the Seaport reflect the most elegant and modernist architecture in Boston. The Seaport is an anthem of sophistication and affluence. The Seaport is an articulation of gorgeous design and decorous appointment. We built a city within a city. And Boston can be said to be a beautiful city, beloved. Well, I finished my meeting that day and at the State House, and I grabbed my briefcase, picked up a newspaper for the ride back home. And 30 minutes later, when I got off the train in the Fields Corner section of Dorchester, what did I see? I saw one man passing crack and one man passing money. I traveled a little later that day into Roxbury. And what did I see? I saw tenants being evicted from their homes in the wake of gentrification and greedy landlords. I saw liquor stores on almost every block and able-bodied black men standing on the corners with no prospects for work in an otherwise vibrant economy. Angered by this, I went down to Mattapan, and what did I see, beloved? I saw a street memorial on the corner of Blue Hill Avenue and Babson Street dedicated to a 13-year-old boy who had been murdered on an early Sunday morning last spring. And beloved, I couldn't help but thinking about the shining and beautiful niceties I witnessed downtown that day and those suffering black and brown people persisting uptown, their backs against the wall trying to make a living despite the odds, seeking a way out of their pain and disappointment and distress. And I couldn't help but think about what a divided city Boston is. A city of haves and a city of have-nots. A city where the prosperous dominate and pursue their own selfish agendas. A city where the poor find little relief from drudgery and from the pressures endured on any given day. I, beloved, couldn't help but coming to the conclusion that Boston is a deeply polarized city along the lines of race, along the lines of public education, along the lines of healthcare, along the lines of neighborhood boundaries, polarization. But oh, as I come to my conclusion, if we could just be like JB and go to work collectively and prophesy and work for a better Boston. Oh, if we could be just like JB and speak and act against those wilderness things like racism, those wilderness things like sexism, those wilderness things like poverty, then we can find ourselves in a better place, in a better community. If we could be like JB and somehow speak and take action against the intense social polarization that characterizes our community, then we can find ourselves in those beloved stations where fairness and equality are gained. If we could speak and take action about supporting one another, about encouraging one another, about behaving peacefully towards each other, we would arrive upon achieving our fullest human capacity in the interest of love and kindness. Amen. Congregation, please stand. Please rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn, Answering the Call of Love.
Let us
was deeply inspiring. It's a beautiful word. My mic isn't on. They're telling me from the back. Thank you. Now it's on. Anyway, I thanked everybody. Thank you for bringing that beautiful word to us. It's very inspiring. I think it's a challenge you've laid down for us, Kevin, and I'm deeply affected by it. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, John. Thank you to all our guests, and thank you for everyone for joining in worship this morning. We have a lot to think about. Please, if you'd like to, join us with coffee hour in the next room just after a short postlude from our music director, Tom. Thank you. Happy Sunday.